Bună dimineața, bună, cum îmi place mie să spun. Ne bucurăm foarte tare că sunteți alături de noi în această dimineață. Este un eveniment organizat de Biroul Parlamentului European în România, în colaborare cu Universitatea Alexandru Ioan Cuza din Iași. Deci, o să vă rog să vă pregătiți deja întrebările, pentru că știu că aveți foarte multe întrebări când vine vorba de subiectele pe care le vom discuta astăzi. După cum bine știți, tonul discuției și limba în care ne vom manifesta 90% din timp va fi engleza, însă dacă considerați că vă e mai simplu să vorbiți în română, putem să facem și asta, suntem conectați, avem traducere și așa mai departe. So I'm going to switch to English. Good morning to all of you present today. I am Oana Tache. I'm a journalist and a content creator. I'll be moderating today's discussion about the challenges the European parliamentary democracy is facing and the importance of civic engagement. Thank you all once again for coming. We're hoping for a very engagement discussion about the benefits of the European parliamentary democracy and youth engagement, because it's about all of you. Before we start and introduce the speakers today, I'll kindly ask you to prepare the questions you may have to address to the speakers. We'll kindly ask you to address the questions in English. However, if you feel like talking in Romania, as said before, you can do that as well. I'll give the floor to Mrs. Mădălina Beatrice Mihalache, Head of the European Parliament Liaison Office in Romania, for the opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Bună ziua tuturor! Mă bucur să mă aflu aici. Bine ați venit! Îți mulțumesc pentru introducere, Oana Tache, și mulțumesc tuturor pentru prezența lor aici, pentru interesul arătat discuției noastre. Încep prin a mulțumi gazdelor noastre, Universitatea Alexandru Ioan Cuza și domnului profesor universitar dr. Tudorel Toader, rectorul Universității Alexandru Ioan Cuza, pentru deschiderea și disponibilitatea de a ne găzdui. Domnia sa ne va adresa un cuvânt de bun venit în câteva momente. Aș vrea de asemenea să mulțumesc și gazdelor noastre de la Facultatea de Sociologie și Științe Social-Politice și decanului facultății, domnului profesor universitar dr. Conțiu Tiberu Șoitu, pentru tot sprijinul acordat. I want to thank Stephen Clark, Director in the European Parliament's Directorate General for Communication, who travelled all the way from Brussels to have an open discussion with you about European democracy and the importance of civic engagement and political participation. Last, but certainly not least, I want to thank also our guest speakers, Diana Filimon, coordinator of the alternative information channel Gen Știri, and president of Apulum Forum Association, and Alin Kifor, law student and content creator, who promotes legal education on his already successful social media channels. I'll start my brief welcome address with a phrase that is never said too often, and that has never been so relevant. Democracy cannot be taken for granted. Europe is facing many challenges nowadays. There is a war in our neighborhood, and we see a sovereign country, Ukraine, invaded by an aggressor state, Russia. The EU has stepped up to help Ukraine in many ways, and so has Romania. The EU is supporting the EU accession process of the Republic of Moldova, who faces many threats to its security. Beyond geopolitical challenges, we face many other challenges, global challenges, climate change, technological change, and many other challenges and risks. Democracy is under pressure globally. Standing up to pressure to our democratic systems, the European Parliament promotes legislation and policies in the interest of European citizens. It is an open, transparent and inclusive institution. We can overcome these challenges to democracy, firstly through participation. And this means taking part in political processes and striving to produce the challenges and the solutions we want through civic and political participation. Secondly, by educating ourselves to navigate the ocean of information and educating ourselves against disinformation. Today, a year ahead of the European elections in May 24, we invite you to an open discussion about democratic values, about the importance of the European Parliament's role and work, as well as why it's so important to be informed and participate in democratic political processes. Topics that will be further developed by Stephen Clark and our guests in the following discussion with you. We also want to hear your stories, young people, civil society organizations, schools and university are such an important partner for defending and developing European parliamentary democracy. You can hold decision makers to account. You can promote those European values, democratic values, the rule of law, and fundamental rights through your actions and through your words. That is why your presence here matters. It's up to you and us to transform these challenges in opportunities tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Mihalache. Îl voi invita acum pe domnul profesor universitar dr. Tudorel Toader, rectorul Universității Alexandru Ioan Cuza din Iași și în același timp gazda noastră, să vă adreseze câteva cuvinte de bun venit. Vă mulțumim, domnule rector.
Eu vă mulțumesc pentru invitație, vă mulțumesc pentru faptul că ați acceptat ca această dezbatere să aibă loc și anul acesta în aula magna a Universității Alexandru Ioan Cuza din Iași, prima universitate fondată în România modernă. Valorile europene, valorile democrației, trebuie să le asimilăm, trebuie să ne bucurăm de ele, trebuie să le folosim pentru a ne dezvolta personalitatea, pentru a contribui la evoluțiile sociale, indiferent în spațiul geografic în care ne aflăm. Mulțumesc, domnule director, doamna director, domnule decan, felicitări pentru organizare. Cele câteva cuvinte care le voi spune, nu neapărat din perspectiva funcției de rector sau calității de jurist. Le voi spune din perspectiva experiențelor pe care le-am acumulat, le-am avut la nivelul Parlamentului European. Am avut ocazia ca în mai multe rânduri să mă adresez, cum se spune, Parlamentului European, în calitate de președinte al Consiliului JAI, Consiliul pentru Justiție și Afaceri Interne, reunim ministrii Justiției din Uniune și ministrii afacerilor de interne, uneori numai cu justiția, numai cu internele, alteori împreună. Din această perspectivă am văzut care este mesajul, de fapt, pe care eu aș vrea să vi-l transmit în principal. Faptul că este necesar ca să participați la viața Uniunii Europene, la viața societății, comunității românești, etc. Este necesar să vă manifestați în procesele electorale. Este esențial pe cine alegeți. Nu puteți avea așteptări de la oameni care nu sunt calificați pentru demnitatea pe care îi alegeți. Nu puteți avea așteptări de la o structură, indiferent de decizie colectivă de la Parlament, dacă nu trimiteți acolo oamenii cei mai calificați. Cert este că voi trebuie să vă implicați, nu neapărat în perspectiva și alegători, poate veți face parte din structurile Parlamentului European, poate veți face parte chiar din acest for legislativ decizional. Cert este că noi trebuie ca români să ne corelăm, să ne racordăm la ritmurile europene. Noi trebuie să ne armonizăm standardele de protecție a drepturilor, libertăților, intereselor legitime, etc., cu standardele, cu cele europene. Trebuie să creăm deschideri ca să vă manifestați, să conștientizați și să preluați, să duceți mai departe ștacheta acestei democrații. Revin eu în calitate de președinte al Consiliului JAI, am inițiat și negociat multe dintre prevederile europene. Și dacă mă refer numai la parchetul european, la EPO, unde era un blocaj, 8 țări din Uniune vroiau parchet european. Vera Iurova, comisar, avea nevoie de 9 ca să deblocheze dialogul consolidat. Era 27 martie 2017, participam prima dată și la Consiliu și se punea problema repoziționării eventual altor state să adere și altele la acest proiect european și să deblocheze dialogul consolidat, cum se spune. Și am votat pentru demararea acestei proceduri. După care eram ministru și am inițiat și elaborat regulamentul de funcționare a parchetului. Și avertizorii de integritate și comerțul electronic și furnizarea probelor electronice, multe reglementări. V-am dat doar un exemplu. Un exemplu prin care am vrut să vă transmit faptul că norme la nivel european au avut sorgintea în președinția României la Consiliu. Trebuie fiecare să fim buni cetățeni, buni membri ai comunității, buni specialiști, buni familiști, buni părinți, copii și așa mai departe, dar trebuie în același timp să contribuim la dezvoltarea și la eficientizarea și la punerea în aplicare a acestor valori europene. Mai spun o idee și închei. Azi când vorbim la nivelul Parlamentului European, există un proiect foarte generos și foarte necesar. Vorbeam cu doamna director, înainte de a veni aici în fața dumneavoastră. Noi, vorbesc ca jurist acum, noi avem așteptări ca reglementările pe care trebuie să le respectăm, să le valorificăm, să fie clare, previzibile, predictibile, să le înțelegem, să le acceptăm. Și atunci, la nivelul Parlamentului, ca și la nivelul țării, există o preocupare foarte accentuată ca normele juridice legale să întrunească aceste 3 cerințe cumulative, ca să le repet, să le cunoaștem, înțelegem, să le asimilăm și să le aplicăm. Există acolo o direcție care armonizează reglementările, nu numai traduceri și armonizarea specificităților fiecărei țări contributoare la viața juridică și la fondul juridic activ al Uniunii Europene. Domnule director, doamna director, vă mulțumesc încă o dată pentru faptul că ați organizat aici la noi. Domnule decan, pentru că m-ați invitat și mi-ați dat posibilitatea să vorbesc. Eu, vouă, cei care sunteți prezenți sau care ne auziți pe canalele media, vă transmit acest îndemn cu deplină convingere. Trebuie să ieșiți din matca acelui confort personal, sunteți tineri, încă nu v-ați instalat, și să participați activ la viața comunității, la viața societății românești și europene în ansamblu ei. Numai așa veți fi împliniți, bucuroși pentru ceea ce faceți și numai așa veți recepta beneficiile valorilor europene, pe care este o mare calitate că sunteți tineri, pe care aproape că ni se pare un dat așa firesc să le avem, dar numai prin aderare la Uniune am putut să deschidem această fereastră spre democrație. Mulțumesc, sănătate, succes lucrărilor, succes vouă!
Vă mulțumim foarte mult, atât pentru cuvintele dumneavoastră, cât și pentru faptul că ne găzduiți astăzi aici. As we know, we gathered here today to discuss and debate about the European parliamentary democracy. The European Parliament plays a central role by representing the people of Europe through its elected members. As you may know, the European Parliament is the only transnational parliament in the world, and it is also the only directly elected EU institution. It didn't have a success story or a case study to get inspired from or to implement lessons learned. In spite of this, in September last year, we've celebrated 70 years from the first meeting of the Parliament. Of course, at that time, it wasn't called the European Parliament, as we know it today. 10 years later, in 1962, it was named the European Parliament. There are many challenges ahead, and there were many challenges in the past. Challenges that this institution had to tackle. Some criticize the institution, some praise it. We know it is still a lot of work to be done, but what's important is that this Parliament delivers for its citizens. To be able to deliver even more, it needs also the engagement and the involvement of all of you, of all the Europeans, of course. I'm giving now the floor to a very special guest, Mr. Stephen Clark. He is the director in the Directorate General for Communication of the European Parliament, to tell you more about why all the citizens should know what the European Parliament does, what it stands for, and how can we all protect the democracy that we are still lucky to live in. Welcome, and thank you very much for being here in Romania.
So, thank you very much for that. I'd like to start with a word of thanks. Thanks for the rector, thanks for the dean, for allowing us to have this event here in this magnificent place. Thanks to Aline and Diana, who we'll be discussing later on. Thanks to you, Anna, for what you're doing here today. Thanks to the team who set this whole event up. But I think mostly, thank you to all of you. Thank you for being here today, for being prepared to listen, and thank you for what you're going to do in the future. In the near future, and I hope also in the more distant future. What we hope to do today is maybe plant some seeds. And I see a sea of blue in front of me here. I think that means EPAS, it means European Parliament Ambassador School, doesn't it? So you're very welcome. It's one of the best things we do, I think, as a European Parliament. We're very proud of this program, and I think it gives a lot of people access to Europe in a way that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. I like always to introduce myself first. So my name is Steve. I am British. Now that may seem a little strange to you, but I'm also still a European, notwithstanding Brexit, and that's why I'm here today. I've been working in the European Parliament for 32 years, which makes me old, but it also means that I was quite young when I started, and I was driven by a kind of idealism about Europe and getting out and seeing the world, and I hope I still have that enthusiasm today. In any case, I sort of know my way around the European Parliament, and my current job is the director for the European Parliament's offices in every member state. So we have an office, European Parliament, in every capital city in the European Union, including in Bucharest, and Mădălina is the head of our office there. I think she probably said that, and there are similar offices everywhere. So one of the great pleasures of my job is to be able to visit these places, and not only these places, but to get further out. And I think it's very important that we move beyond capital cities, beyond the political bubble, and actually meet people in the regions, out there in what you might call, the provinces of Europe. And that's very important, and that's why I'm so happy to be in this wonderful town, Iași, today. I thought it was called Iasi before I came, but I found out it was called Iași. And I've come to this town of 100 churches, and it's a beautiful place, and it's a lively place, and I can feel that straight away. And the one thing I want to say before I start is, this is Europe. Don't ever think that Europe is somewhere else. This place is as much Europe as Brussels is, or as Strasbourg is, or Paris, or Berlin or anything else. This is Europe. We are in Europe here. And that's what we, people like me who work and live and work in Brussels, we need to be always reminded of that fact. Okay? So our subject of the day is democracy. So, big word. And people talk about democracy, and sometimes you get a bit suspicious when people talk about democracy. It's a grand abstract concept. But I would like to say that it's actually, today in our world, it's a very real concept, it's a very relevant concept, it's a very precious concept, and it's something which is under attack. It's under attack from conspiracy theorists, people who will always find the darkest possible explanation for whatever you see is happening in the world. Similarly, from misinformation merchants, people who tell you things maybe because it's in their interest to tell you, but they're not true. And that is an attack on democracy, because democracy doesn't work if people don't know the truth or don't have access to the truth. It's under attack from people who seek power without accountability. There's nothing wrong with seeking power in a democratic system if you're democratically elected. But if you don't want the accountability and the responsibility, then that's not right. And of course, and I say this to a country which is close, it's under attack literally with tanks and guns in a neighboring country. And that is something which brings home to us all, I think, very much, that this value of democracy is not something abstract and philosophical. It is something real, and it is something that some people want to get rid of. Therefore, it needs to be defended. And it needs to be defended and stood up for not only, it needs to be stood up everywhere, in all circumstances, but it needs to be stood up at the European level as well. Europe matters. So if you look at the news, or maybe you don't look at the news, you look at your news feed, right? What do you see there? You see stories of people getting wound up about Europe. You see stories about the climate change and what we're going to do about it. You see stories about finance and economic growth and trade and borders. You see news about the pandemic. You see news about migration. You see news about war and peace. And what do all of those things tell us? That these are all subjects that are dealt with at the European level and can only be dealt with at the European level. So it matters how we manage things at the European level. We can't ignore it. And I think that's a realization which helps, is a first step to being engaged, to getting involved in politics at a European level. Okay, so we need democracy at a European level. We need to defend it at the European level. That can only happen if you get involved. You, meaning everybody, but you in particular in this room today. And I mean that very clearly, and I'll explain a little bit how that's going to work. But first, a context. The context is European elections next year. So I work for the European Parliament. I want to talk a little bit about the Parliament. We're talking about parliamentary democracy here. It's a very important aspect of democracy. And it's a time, this is an opportunity, I think. These elections are an opportunity for us all to say a big yes to democracy. It's a chance for us all to have a say in the direction that our continent takes, that we all take together. Our campaign, the campaign that we run as a service of the European Parliament, as a department, a communication service of the European Parliament, isn't about choosing the direction that Europe takes. It's about making sure that the public, the voters, the electorate, they decide what direction Europe takes. And I said earlier on that I'm British, and I know what happens when people sit back from a democratic process. Maybe they don't take it seriously enough, they don't get engaged enough, particularly young people, and things that you don't want or don't expect can easily happen in those circumstances. So I take that for me personally, and it's something I've lived myself in a very personal way. I don't want that sort of thing to happen again. So get involved. Now, why? Why is it so important for you to get involved? Well, in this messed up world in which we live, who do people actually listen to? Do they listen to experts? Do they listen to the big public media stations? Do they listen to professors? Do they listen to politicians? Do they listen to institutional figures? Do they listen to the guy from Brussels standing on a stage? I don't think so. I think they listen more to people close to them that they trust. They believe, we're going that way. It's the way of social media, our fragmented media marketplace. The world we live in is confusing. It's full of disinformation. So where do people go? They go to people that they think they can rely on, the people that influence them. They can be family, they can be friends, they can be colleagues, they can be influencers, literally. All of these people. And they're not the institutional figures. So what we want to do as we go towards these elections is not only be ourselves out there speaking to people, but asking people to speak to each other, to become influencers for democracy. And that's what I would ask everybody in this room to do. In a moment, I'll explain a little bit more about how you can do that. But I think you, in particular, you have a huge stake in all of this. You are the ones who will take advantage of the opportunities that Europe can offer you in the future. And you are the ones who will be most affected by the decisions that will be taken by Europe and that will make the difference, for good or bad, over the next decades through which you will live your lives. So, we all think that it's important to get you on board. And we have a mechanism for doing that. And here it is. ΗMPREUNă EU. Okay, is that the proper Romanian way of saying it? I say together.eu. When I try and pronounce this in other languages, it always gets a smile from the audience. This is a community. Now, what this is a website. Obviously, you can tell from the dot. It's somewhere that you can go and sign up. If you go there and sign up, and you say, I'm interested, I want to be part of this thing. I want to be part of a community which is across the whole of Europe, that is interested in the future of Europe and interested in making democracy happen. You can go there. The first thing that will happen is that you will give your email address and you will be kept in the loop. You will get information. But you can do more. You can actually go in there and say, these are the subjects I'm interested in. People are interested in different things. You might be interested in climate, you might be interested in the economy, you might be interested in the rights, gender equality, or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. Everybody can come into this community. It's not about a specific topic, it's about democracy. You can tick a little box as well saying, I want to volunteer. That means I actually want to do something more. And if you do that, we, or our people in Bucharest, will be in touch with you. And they say, look, you want to be involved? Here's things we can do. And we offer things. We offer training. We offer materials. We offer knowledge. We offer contacts with people like you all across Europe, in Romania and across Europe. We offer you the opportunity to work on what you want to do for democracy, for the campaign, to get people interested in these elections. So you can organize events, you can do things on social media. We can offer support for those events and those activities. So what we want is to talk to you, we want to get to know you, we want to work together.
Activities, of course I had a journalistic background, but the idea is that in the past 4 years, this platform, the community and everything that the office in Bucharest is doing changed my life, for real. And this is why I wanted to highlight once again the fact that it's important to understand better what are the programs, what are the European values, and why the democracy is so important for each and every one of us. When it comes to the challenges the European parliamentary democracy is facing, there are solutions. However, as all the speakers so far mentioned, disinformation and misinformation war is by far one of the biggest, as it hinders all the efforts to tackle the issue and that arise and corrodes the foundation of our democracies. I corroborate what was said so far and reiterate, acquiring knowledge and correct information is crucial in this context. This is why I'm going to give the floor to Diana Filimon, coordinator of Gen Știri Alternative Newsroom and president of Apulum Forum, focusing on youth civic engagement, to say a few remarks about the link between civic engagement and fighting disinformation in the EU from her perspective as activist and also coordinator of an alternative and innovative newsroom. I must say, Diana, that I'm a huge fan of your work and I'm really happy to share the stage with you today.
Thank you so much, Oana. And I'm very happy to see so many young people here, and I watched your faces because I do attend a lot of events, and I see the level of engagement is way over the average. I'm a very active activist. I created an NGO in Alba Iulia 6.5 years ago, and with the entire focus on young people. And only in this last week, I think I posted on Facebook for the people who are still on Facebook that I drove like 1,000 kilometers around Romania. I do tens and tens and tens of workshops and meetings with young people, with teachers, with communities around the country to better understand what's the vibe, because I think that's very important for an activist. And I'm here today to tell you 3 big mistakes I think we as a society still make and still claim in the public space. And the first one is every time we say young people don't vote. And statistically, the Romanian young people vote pretty much average. You're not worse than in any other countries. And you're just a reflection of the society you live in. You cannot vote in higher numbers if the Romanian adults, let's call them like this, don't vote in higher numbers. And if in bigger democracy, let's say older democracy, the percentage of adults is higher as a turnout to vote, the young people vote more. So it's an example of, our example is the one who leads young people to vote. And, but putting aside the adults, and let's pretend it's just you in this, I would advise you to think about that next year, hundreds of thousands of young people will vote for the first time. That's encouraging and scary at the same time, because it's like the biggest number of young people who will go in 1 year to vote for the first time, because we had such a abnormal gap of years between the elections. And voting is a habit. You either have a habit of not voting or you have a habit of voting, and this creates early on in your life. So if you want to create around you a vibe of going out to vote and making it a celebration, do it. We coordinated in the previous elections hundreds of young people as observers in the elections. So they were monitoring the election. It was an amazing thing to see the faces of people in the polling stations when serious young people would go in with the ID and say, I'm an observer and I'm here to make sure that the elections are correct. It was a very interesting clash of generation. At the end of the day, they would share cookies with the ones in the stations. So it's an interesting clash. So first of all, young people vote. Not abnormally lower than in other countries, but it definitely needs to be higher because your voices have to be heard. The second misconception, which is very often made, is that young people don't care. And since I'm only focusing on young people for some years now, I know that you care. And I think in the public communication during the next 1 year, 1.5 years, we need to understand what do you care about? And if you want to convince, because I'm sure I'm in a room of people who will go to vote because you did the effort to come here today, and that makes you already special, you should talk to your friends. Why do they care about? Do they care about the environment? Okay, who makes the regulations for the environment? Well, the government, ours or the European one, European Parliament. So for everything that you care about in your lives and in your society, there is a red line to the elections, because our entire lives are decided in certain percent, but by who is standing in the parliament, European Parliament, Romanian Parliament, mayor, who's not mayor, and stuff like that. And I think that you can easily convince anyone to do this. It's not about politicians. The elections are not about politicians, and we should really get that in our heads. It's about us. Politicians are a reflection of ours. If we don't go out to vote, that's in a way a vote. We give empty seats to be occupied by a minority who decides to go and vote. I want to make also a special call for the girls to go out and vote. In the percentage, girls vote less than men. That's not okay. I'm a very proud woman, and I think we should make our voices more heard. There are many decisions going out in some Western countries who are directly impacting our lives, our bodies, and everything else. So we should be there and make it very clear that we are not absent from the society. And the third mistake I think we are making as a society in general, we are saying young people are victims of disinformation, or disinformation is keeping them out from the vote. No, it's lack of information. Because the mainstream media, unfortunately, doesn't talk to young people. I keep saying that for some years, and I hear many times from mainstream media people and very good journalists, they will grow up and they will read us. No, they won't. No, you won't. I mean, you know very well that you will not at some point just grow up and say, I will watch BBC every day. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but that's not a given. So we need to understand that we need to talk as adults on your language about subjects which you are interested in. I coordinate a team of young people who are all under 24 in Gen Știri and Gen Revista, our two main journalistic projects for youth. And we try our best to talk on your language. And guess what? Every subject which is well presented goes well. We talk about Yemen, but we also talk about abortion. We talk about I don't know what the new movie on Netflix, but we also talk about Romanian elections and how serious it is to be there. So the conclusion after almost 2 years of doing this journalistic project is that you care about, you want to be informed about things that matter to you, and in a way which you understand. So I know for you, it's what I am saying is not something new because you are young and you are active, but I think it's a very important year when we have to understand that it's a shared responsibility. Next year is a shared responsibility, ours as well as yours. And the way we will be active or inactive next year will shape Romania and maybe Europe for the next 3-4 years. So I really want you to see in high numbers and make some lines outside the polling stations next year. And I really want you to see, you active in the streets, protest about what you want or what you don't want. Make yourselves heard, because nobody will give you the space if you don't ask for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. As said before, it's important to get out of our personal bubble and understand the bigger pictures and go to vote next year. Last but not least, I'll give the floor for a few short remarks to Alin Chifor, who, beside the fact that he's a top law student at Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca, he is also a very successful content creator. He chose to focus on legal education for youth, and looking at the numbers of his community, it looks he successfully managed to bring legislation and regulations closer to the young audience. With his presence here today, we hope to bring you closer also to the European legislation and to the why should we know what it means. So Alin, please take the floor.
Mulțumesc. O să fiu eu cel care face notă discordantă și vorbește în limba română ca să fiu mai conectat cu voi. Vă mulțumesc foarte mult pentru invitație, în primul rând. Mă bucur să mă aflu astăzi aici cu voi. Mă bucur că suntem atât de aproape de data de 9 mai, aniversarea Europei, iar dacă nu mă înșală matematica, aniversăm 73 de ani de la declarația Schuman, momentul care a generat ceea ce astăzi vedem în Uniunea Europeană. Cu Cu siguranță Robert Schuman și Jean Monnet ar fi mândri de ceea ce a ajuns Uniunea Europeană astăzi, chiar dacă, după părerea mea, e doar începutul, iar, după cum spunea profesorul meu de drept european de la Facultatea de Drept a Universității Babeș-Bolyai, Uniunea Europeană și ideea de comunitate europeană, poate chiar de federație europeană, mi-aș permite să spun, e un elefant pe care trebuie să-l mâncăm cu lingurița, nu putem să-l înghițim din prima, trebuie să acordăm timp acestui ideal, iar în cele din urmă vom ajunge la visul pe care l-au gândit cei dinaintea noastră. În momentul de față trăim niște timpuri grele, într-adevăr am trecut prin una dintre cele mai grave și puternice pandemii, pandemia de COVID-19, una dintre cele mai puternice pandemii din istorie. Avem un război chiar la o aruncătură de băți de România și de Europa, de Uniunea Europeană, războiul din Ucraina, din păcate. Trăim o criză economică, o criză socială. Asistăm la o ascensiune nefericită a extremismului în Europa, sau cel puțin o potențială ascensiune, dar iar ca să citesc din Friedrich Nietzsche, ce nu ne omoară ne face mai puternici, iar eu unul cred că Europa nu va muri și va ieși mult mai puternică din toate aceste provocări. Așa că mă bucur foarte mult că suntem aici să dezbatem tot ceea ce înseamnă ideea de democrație, tot ceea ce înseamnă atentatele la democrație, ce înseamnă războiul, pandemia, dezinformarea, cu care încercăm fiecare dintre noi să luptăm și cu siguranță vom reuși. Mulțumesc!
Thank you, Alin. As it was already mentioned, the discussion today takes place in the context of the following European elections, which will take place about 1 year from now. Given all the challenges faced by the EU, we want to highlight the importance of protecting the European democracy as well as the means at hand to do it. Before I start with the questions, I'll make another call for you to prepare the questions. Do you have questions? Yes. I've seen some heads there, like, please, don't be shy, don't be shy. And also, if you don't have questions and you only want to make your own remarks about the topics that we are discussing today, please do so. We want to hear your perspective too, your insights, as well as your hopes and doubts regarding Europe. So, I'm going to break the ice, okay, for you guys. I'm going to put the first question. I'm doing that. But after that, I'm going to give you the floor because this is a direct and interactive discussion. I will start with one of my favorite question nowadays. So, we know that politics has changed radically since the beginning of social media platforms. We've been talking about it and we agree with this. Through social media, most people have access to quality information, but also to fake news, disinformation, and radical opinions. How can we prevent disinformation in a democratic society like the EU without restricting freedom of speech or freedom of the individual? I will start with Stephen, if you guys are okay with this.
Yeah, it's not easy. Misinformation, disinformation is everywhere, and I guess it always has been. There's always been propaganda, but of course the social media make it so much easier to get this kind of misinformation around. And I think really there are many things you can try to do. You can try and rebut, you can try and spot a story or a narrative which is false as it comes up. It sort of bubbles up in the sort of the stranger areas of social media, and sometimes you can get there first, as it were, with quality information. I think there are basically two things in the long run that we have to do, and one of them is to provide good quality information ourselves through a pluralistic media and social media landscape. And I think you mentioned that we have to sort of, it's a very honourable and important job to be getting accurate information across. And we have to be as good at doing that as the other lot who want to get other kinds of misinformation across. That's one thing. The other thing that is really important is to be aware and to be conscious of what's going on in the world of media and social media, and be able to spot these narratives, to be skeptical, to look and think for a second about what we see in our Instagram feed or our Facebook feed or whatever other feed that you're looking at, TikTok, hang on a minute, who's saying this? Why are they saying this? Are they trying to push me in a certain direction? There are tools that we have to be sensitized to misinformation. I mean, sometimes you look at it and you say, really? Seriously? And if you stop and just apply that moment's thought to something, you realize, hang on, someone is taking the mickey here. And that's a question of what we call in grand terms media literacy. And I think I'm hopeful that in fact many people in this room are already extremely media literate in that sense. Also because you are using social media as practitioners yourselves. So you know how to make a reel. You know the tricks of how these things work. So you can spot those tricks more easily when someone else is using them on you. And that's part of the general story. So I think those two things, better and more reliable information, well communicated when on the side of accurate information, and two, media literacy.
Thank you. Diana?
I think it's a big confusion because the online environment is so full of options and informations and people and faces and everything, and you don't know exactly what to take for granted and what not, what's subjective and what's not. I think even the terms subjectivism or objectivism are very blurred, and my solution to this is to put journalism back in its place. Because journalism, as opposed to any other content online, has to obey some rules, or it should, because we see in some countries they stop obeying and they need to pay. But in general, we need to have, besides all the amazing channels, everything that's going on online, and which I think I really envy you because you have such a huge opportunity of being exposed to so many cool things so young. We need to also put somewhere in the middle journalism, and we have to push the journalist, even though the mainstream media, who's a bit reluctant in adapting to the new world, especially in Romania, because in the other countries I see that it's changing. We need to push them to get back to the reality and start communicating with you, because they are the ones who can be punished by the law if they do something wrong. They can be, as you saw, I don't know if you followed recently, someone was paying a fine, will pay a fine because they said in a TV show they took in a very bad place a discussion about the suicide of a young journalist. And so they can be regulated, they can be put by law in their place. So we need to have journalism back in a cool way for young people. And I see a wave and I'm optimistic about that. But I think that's one of the big solutions. And also you should push. I really hope you have still a newspaper in the university, or if not, because I heard so many things about Opinia Studențească, and some amazing journalists came from here. So you need to push these people to make more content for you and to demand facts, to demand a place where you can go and get the real thing, and then you can do whatever you feel like on the internet. You can be your own creators as long as you know where to go to find the truth.
Thank you very much, Diana. Alin?
Mulțumesc că, în primul rând, trebuie să fiu total de acord cu Steven. În momentul de față, dezinformarea, mă rog, ea a existat întotdeauna, dar aș adăuga eu, în momentul de față avem o dezinformare pe steroizi, având în vedere că există social media, care e o sursă de propagare atât a informațiilor de calitate, a informațiilor educative, dacă tot s-a menționat anterior, cât și a informațiilor nocive, informațiilor toxice pentru societate și, de ce nu, chiar pentru democrația europeană. Așa că, într-adevăr, una dintre soluții este oferirea unor informații de calitate și evitarea, după părerea mea, a unui soi de cenzură pozitivă, deoarece scopul nu scuză mijloacele. Până la urmă, presa trebuie să rămână liberă, oportunitatea oamenilor de a se exprima trebuie să rămână absolut liberă, indiferent dacă aceștia dezinformează mai mult sau mai puțin voit. Scopul nostru trebuie să fie acela de a filtra informația și de a ne folosi simțul critic pe care îl dobândim prin educație. În al doilea rând, trebuie să fiu de acord și cu Diana, un jurnalist de calitate este primul pionier în lupta împotriva dezinformării. În momentul în care în România și în Europa, dacă ar fi să extrapolăm, vom avea un jurnalism de calitate, iar aici trebuie să mă refer la situația din România, unde, după părerea mea, mai avem mult de lucrat în această zonă, dar, sigur, există speranță prin proiectele noi, cum e și Gen Știri și așa mai departe. Nu avem cum să evităm dezinformarea decât dacă instalăm și susținem un jurnalist de calitate. Și în al treilea rând, iar aici îmi permit să aduc o precizare suplimentară personală, educația, chiar dacă deja a devenit un clișeu acest subiect, este soluția împotriva dezinformării. Cine poate avea simț critic în afară de o persoană educată, o persoană care cunoaște istoria, care cunoaște prezentul în primul rând, care cunoaște regula de bază în ceea ce privește informarea, respectiv informarea din 3 surse, și vă spun sincer că am trăit pe pielea mea experiența aceasta a dezinformării și a avalanșei de informații atunci când a început acest cumplit război din Ucraina. Vă spun că a fost o experiență personală, deoarece pe platformele de social media țineam live stream-uri care, fără să exagerez, erau urmărite de mii de oameni. Am ajuns să fim chiar al doilea live stream din România ca număr de urmăritori în timpul războiului, cu 8-9 mii de oameni pe live stream care adresau întrebări care mai de care, avalanșe de informații care veneau înspre și dinspre noi. Și vă spun sincer, chiar și eu am căzut pradă dezinformării, dar aplicând regulile pe care le știam prin educație, am reușit măcar, dacă nu să înlătur, măcar să atenez efectul dezinformării, care știm cu toții că poate fi extrem de nocivă. Deci, asta ar fi soluția primordială, după părerea mea, educația. Și să știți că educația nu se adresează doar persoanelor, nu știu, de sub 14 ani sau sub 18 ani, persoanele care încă sunt în sistemul de învățământ. Educație poate să aibă loc și în favoarea unei persoane de 50 de ani, 60 de ani. Și vă spun din experiență, pentru că o bună parte din publicul meu de pe social media sunt persoane care ar putea să-mi fie părinți sau chiar bunici și sunt persoane dornice de a se educa. Deci, soluția este, după părerea mea, educația.
Mulțumesc tare mult, Alin. Perfect de acord. Cui dăm cuvântul mai departe? Hai să vedem o mână sus, uite acolo. Imediat ajunge microfonul la tine. O să te rog să te și prezinți, să ne spui cum te cheamă, câți ani ai și de unde ești.
My name is Mădălina Beatrice. I'm 16 and I'm from Colegiul Național Vasile Alexandru din Iași. And I'd like to ask you about the lack of juridical education. So far, we've seen many answers from you that education is the answer to everything, the cure-all. And yet, we see that juridical education is lacking in school. If education is the cure-all, why shouldn't and education is given at school? Everyone knows education. Where do you get that? At school. Why is there such a lack of juridical education? After all, we should know our rights, our obligations, and where do we study those? We're at a college for law right now. I need to go to college to know law. Some people have gone so far as to search for Alin Kifor for law advice. Shouldn't they know that already? That's all.
Thank you very much for your question. Yeah, you go first. It was a direct...
Mulțumesc de întrebare și, sigur, sunt în totalitate de acord cu tine. Am spus-o și o să mai spun încă o dată. Într-o lume ideală, eu nu ar trebui să am succes pe TikTok, pentru că toată lumea ar trebui să știe ceea ce eu deja promovez și clipurile pe care le fac, informațiile pe care le transmit, dar, din păcate, nu trăim într-o lume ideală, ci într-o lume departe de ideal, dar asta nu ne oprește să mergem înspre acel ideal, să tindem, să sperăm că o să atingem vreodată măcar un punct apropiat de idealul în care, după cum ai spus și tu, toată lumea își va cunoaște drepturile și obligațiile, pentru că și asta contează, iar sistemul de învățământ nu e totul. Educația e un conglomerat de factori și de circumstanțe, inclusiv, cum spunem noi aici în România, cei 7 ani de acasă, educația pe care o primim înainte să ajungem în sistemul de învățământ. Sigur, nucleul central, pilonul cel mai important al educației este sistemul de învățământ și materiile pe care le dobândim și informațiile pe care le dobândim în școală și ulterior în liceu, universitate și așa mai departe. Dar mi se pare că putem să complinim lipsurile acestea. Nu putem să ne bizuim în totalitate pe sistemul de învățământ. Putem să complinim lipsurile, uite, prin, de ce nu, putem fi autodidacți, se poate învăța dreptul, crede-mă, dreptul. Acum, nu neapărat la nivel de specialist, dar la nivel de bază, cât să ne știm drepturile și obligațiile și pe cont propriu, dar categoric soluția cea mai optimă și care ar avea o arie de acoperire maximă ar fi îmbunătățirea sistemului de învățământ, introducerea materiilor precum educația juridică, educația socială, educația economică și așa mai departe în școală, pentru că, și din nou o să fac apel la ceva ce spun întotdeauna când sunt vorbitor la evenimente, viața eu o văd ca pe un joc de Monopoly, să zicem, unde regulile sunt legile. Iar dacă nu cunoști regulile unui joc de Monopoly, tot timpul o să vină unul care o să-ți vândă o casă mai scump sau un orășel mult sub prețul pieței o să ți-l cumpere, iar informarea, că tot vorbeam despre dezinformare, și educația este cea care ne protejează de aceste probleme. Deci, da, din păcate, în momentul de față, nu avem în sistemul de învățământ educație juridică care să ne învețe regulile jocului, dar să sperăm că în viitor o să fie și un profesor de Monopoly, dacă ar fi să mențin metafora.
Acum 4 ani de zile am avut și eu aceeași întrebare ca și tine, numai că nu era vorba de zona juridică, era vorba despre istoria europeană. Și răspunsul a fost cum că de la Bruxelles și de la Strasbourg vin niște recomandări. În plan local, evident că tot aleșii noștri iau anumite decizii, pentru că sistemul de învățământ din România se desfășoară în România. Dar există foarte multe programe europene, există foarte multe programe care te ajută, așa cum spuneam, să ieși din bulă, să poți să te dezvolți. Erasmus pentru antreprenori, EU Solidarity Corps. Stephen, if you want to add something as well to this question.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere I go, this question comes up. Why aren't we taught in schools about the European system? It's the system we live in, and we have a right to know. This, you know, whatever you think of it, it's the system that decides how we live our lives, and legislation, much of it, originates in Europe. And it's actually a major failing of any system not to educate young citizens about the world in which they live, the system in which they live. And this is, you've pointed out the problem in Romania, but this is a problem I find almost everywhere across Europe. And it's something that we are working very hard to change. But, as you said, education is a responsibility of member states, of each separate country, and often of regions within countries. That's how it works in most places. So we do what we can, and in some countries we are making progress, we're making agreements. In the meantime, of course, it's what Aline said, we are plugging gaps as best we can, and other people are plugging gaps. You've been plugging a gap in the legal sphere, and I've seen actually a very interesting project, again, about law in Slovenia, a place I went to recently, where I met some activists who are producing information about how European law feeds through into Slovenian law. And this, you know, the Ambassador School program is another thing that we do to try and sort of get across that gap, and we find that there's a lot of appetite for people to know more and understand more about Europe. So this is civic education, it's not legal as such, but you know, we're in the same area, and what you say is absolutely right. It's something where it's a long, hard slog that we have to go through. I mean, the risk is, sorry if I may, sometimes people think what we want to do is indoctrinate people. And I say that's not how it is. What we want to do is explain to young people the world in which they actually live, so that they can understand it, and then, as citizens, as informed citizens, able to influence it through the democratic process, which brings us back to democracy.
You were talking about explaining the system and everything. May I say that it's done transparently? This is why we are having this kind of meetings, because everything is transparent when it comes to the European Parliament and, of course, the other European institutions. I would like you also, Diana, to answer this question, because this is what you're doing with Gen Știri and Gen Revista. You are doing education, alternative one, of course, digital, hybrid, if I may say, but I think this is also a question for you.
I want to be the devil's advocate in this discussion and say we have civic education in school. How much is it helping? Not much. From my experience, we will always need people like Alin or people who are doing other types of content, because it's impossible for schools to keep up with the society and the changes in the society. I was in a very interesting discussion in a workshop I did for high school teachers in the southern part of Romania, and they were very worried about AI. I mean, cool teachers, they were worried about and they wanted to learn. They said, let's do something about that. So it's all about the human resources in these systems. Because I hear a lot from young people saying we are against the system is not working, we are the system. Everybody here is the system. So it's great to have legal education in schools, it's great to have every type of education in school, but it matters a lot who's doing it, how they're doing it, because we have civic education, as I started saying, and it's not really working. I mean, usually the teachers who are doing economics or I don't know what else they're teaching, they're also teaching history and they're also teaching civic education. So it's not a matter of what, it's a matter of how we do things. And in a country where you hear from the moment you are born almost like, oh, this is a country which you shouldn't invest in, you should get out of here as soon as you can, nothing you can do, nothing matters, nothing changes. It's very hard to start doing things properly and to believe that it can be better. And I think that for every type of education we start, we have to be very much aware that Romania is in the best situation it ever was in its history. We are living the best times in the history, even with the war near us, even with the post-pandemic trauma and all that. It is the best time to be alive in Romania. So we really need to understand also the importance of maintaining and growing on that. So, and about education and putting in schools whatever you feel like, I think it's also you have to come in the middle, to meet us in the middle for this and push more for it. When you get mobilized and you start demanding things and get organized, you will achieve stuff. But unfortunately, many discussions about this are just maintained in circles where we discuss and we say, yes, it should be done, nothing happens. So let's set up an agenda. We want it until when? How do we do it? Where do we start? Get organized, because no one else will do it for you.
Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much for your answers. Next, we are having some hands here. Yeah, here. Can somebody give the microphone? There,
Yeah.
there. You already have it. Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Valeria, I'm from Republic of Moldova and I study here in Iași. I have a general question and I'm very curious, if you are living in a democratic society, why we have still all of these wars, all of this economical crisis and all of these social problems, why they still exist?
Thank you for your question.
I think we have to accept that the world will never be a perfect place. And the democratic system is not perfect. It never will be, but it's the best we've got. There's a very famous quote, I think, from Winston Churchill. I'll use it. Everyone uses this one. It's the worst possible system of them all, except for all the rest. And I think our history shows us again and again and again that a democratic system is the best option if we want to thrive, we want to prosper, we want to live in peace. But it doesn't necessarily guarantee those things, because there are many other things happening in the world. Democracy is a way of dealing with the world, of managing the situations in which we find ourselves as best we can, in a way that is in the interest of all of us, not just an elite or a few people, a few wealthy people, whatever it might be. And I think there's a truism, I don't know if I mean, maybe a historian could contest this with some examples, but democracies do not go to war with each other. So this is one thing that we've observed in history. And the European Union, which is in many ways a club of democracies, is also a union which has avoided war on its own territory since it was created. And it won a Nobel Peace Prize as a result of this. So bad stuff happens. I'm sorry, it does. But I still think that the best way to deal with the bad stuff when it happens is to do it in a democratic, open, pluralistic system. We will get ultimately better results. Now, I know there are voices in the world who will suggest, but democracy is slow, it's inefficient. Look at China, look at the rapid progress and the way they can build a road and a railway super fast and all of this stuff. But the price, I think, that is paid for those things, if indeed they are true, is too high. We have a system, we have a European way of doing things, and that is a democratic way of doing things. I say it's not perfect. It doesn't mean we're all going to agree all the time either. And you know, just as in any country, there are going to be different parties proposing different actions, and we will disagree perhaps sometimes very strongly with each other, so that a democratic decision taken in a country can actually be something which many people in that country don't like. And they can say this is a bad thing. But what's important is that we accept the system that produces those decisions, and we live in that system, which also, of course, must respect the rights of minorities of all kinds. And as I say, as Diana just says, I don't think there's a better time to have been alive, at least in the European Union, and I apply that to the rest of the European Union as well, than now, notwithstanding all of the problems we have. So I hope that goes some way to answering your question.
Îmi permit un comentariu personal acum. Suntem obișnuiți să ne uităm către Bruxelles și Strasbourg numai în momentul în care vorbim despre fondurile europene sau în momentul în care se întâmplă lucruri mai puțin plăcute. Arătăm cu degetul. De ce? De acolo vine problema. Ei bine, nu este așa. Și aș vrea să ne concentrăm, apropo de exercițiul pe care începem să-l facem fiecare dintre noi, dar și la nivel de comunitate, iată, împreună în EU, să ne concentrăm și pe lucrurile pozitive care vin dinspre Uniunea Europeană. Și apropo de asta, de la mobilitate, până la educație, până la programele dedicate tinerilor, până la faptul că nu mai târziu de săptămâna trecută, permisul de conducere a devenit universal valabil în toată Uniunea Europeană. Adică nu mai trebuie să-ți schimbi permisul de conducere când te muți într-o altă țară. Nu mai vorbim de faptul că poate lucrezi în Spania și vrei să te muți în Portugalia. Chestia asta se întâmplă așa, pentru că ești partea Uniunii Europene. Și tocmai de aceea mă îndrept către următoarea întrebare, către invitații noștri de astăzi. Este o întrebare dublă, ca să zic așa. Context and background, of course, different from country to country. But from your perspective, what is the biggest benefit of the EU, and also how we can make sure that young people, like the ones that we have here with us today, and we are grateful for it, remain invested and engaged in the society they live in? I'll give the floor to Diana, okay? Thank you very much.
I will do a follow-up to the previous question, saying that I was born in the communism in Romania, and the word peace was everywhere, and a lot of pigeons everywhere. So we were so proud of being in peace, but we were like, it was a very weird peace. You didn't want war, but it still felt like you are paying something for that so-called peace that we were in. We were in a war with ourselves, and we were our own minds and ability to talk. How to engage them more? I always do all the workshops and all the events we are doing with young people. We are trying to do them outside the schools when possible, to try to reach out to them as normal human beings. So I think we should stop. Everybody says the young people are like this, young people are like that. I think it's a mistake of doing this generalization. of a category, of age category. I always joke with my team because I have some of people in my team are in a way older than I am in some things, and we are joking that who's the boomer in the group. And it changes all the time. So they are fluctuating. Some of them are more excited of doing things. Some of them just want to stay at home and be left alone. So we are very different. You are very different. We should start treating you like a huge mass of people who are like the same organism, and start treating you like human beings with different interests, different curiosities, different pains, different excitements in their life. And we need to start a dialogue with you like this. Not young people should be addressed in a certain way, they should respect us and blah, blah, blah. No. It's a common thing I'm saying, and it's not rocket science, but we should just talk to each other like people. I'm having a lot of fun when I share with my colleagues that we all adults have anxiety, and we also have some bouts of depression sometime, and we have bad days and we have good days. So it's a fluctuating, and they're like, yeah, you adults have this? Yeah, we do. So it's we have so many things in common. We should talk more about what brings us together as human beings on this planet in this moment than what separates us in Gen Zs, millennials, boomers, or whatever other categories, which are cool to mention, but they're just what they are, very brutal categories.
Total de acord cu ceea ce zice Diana. Mi se pare că în ceea ce privește engagementul tinerilor în tot ceea ce înseamnă Uniunea Europeană și informarea despre drepturile și obligațiile lor și tot ceea ce presupune această Uniune, mi se pare că singura soluție posibilă aici, îmi asum riscul să fiu ușor absolutist pe subiect, singura soluție este exact acordarea respectului cuvenit acestei păture extrem de importante și de mare a populației Uniunii Europene și a României, dacă ar fi să o vedem în particular. Ar trebui ca noi ca populația adultă în sensul de, cum spunea și Diana, așa poate cu o notă ușor sarcastică, boomerii, chiar dacă nici eu nu sunt de acord cu categorisirea oamenilor într-un asemenea mod, poate că adulții ar trebui să nu mai trateze tinerii ca și vorba lui Karl May, ca pe niște greenhorns sau ca pe niște mere necoapte, dacă ar fi să o traducem. Cumva să acordăm respectul cuvenit unei categorii care are un cuvânt de spus, chiar dacă poate cuvântul lor nu este în deplină concordanță cu cuvântul adulților. Acum, referitor la cea mai importantă parte, cel mai important beneficiu pe care România îl obține din Uniunea Europeană, aici o să dau un răspuns ușor abstract și să-mi fie cu iertare. Mie mi se pare că însăși apartenența la o uniune, la o frăție, dacă vreți să fim puțin mai plin de patos, este avantajul cel mai mare pe care îl vom avea. Și acum urmează să concretizez. Am văzut în pandemie o coeziune extraordinară, o coeziune fără precedent a statelor Uniunii Europene. Acel fond de întrajutorare a fost ceva ce pe mine m-a bucurat extrem de mult, eu fiind un euro enthusiast desăvârșit. La fel, m-a umplut de bucurie momentul în care medici români, medici germani, medici din alte state au fost detașați în Lombardia sau în alte regiuni care au devenit focare și adevărate bombe cu ceas în timpul pandemiei de coronavirus. La fel m-a bucurat foarte mult momentul în care, fiind în vacanță în Zakynthos, în Grecia, chelneri și bucătari din restaurante mă salutau cu respect și îmi spuneau: îți mulțumim țării tale pentru că a trimis pompieri să ne ajute să stăvilim incendiile groaznice care au fost cauzate de această problemă climatică cu care ne confruntăm acum. Deci, ca să sumarizez, simpla apartenență la această Uniune, simpla înfrățire cu celelalte state europene de la care avem foarte multe de învățat și care au, spun eu, multe de învățat de la noi, este categoric beneficiul primar și principal al Uniunii Europene și al momentelor post-2007, post-aderării României, și este foarte simplu de vizualizat România de dinainte de Uniunea Europeană și România din prezent pentru a vedea faptul că pariul, ca să zicem așa, de a intra în Uniunea Europeană a fost unul cu siguranță câștigător.
Mulțumesc, Alin. Stephen, please.
Yeah, coming back to what is the greatest thing the EU has done. I mentioned the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, which was received by the EU a few years ago. And I recall that the European Union was created initially as a peace project. It was people saying never again after the Second World War, and that in effect has been achieved. To the extent that we all kind of forgot about the importance of peace for quite a long time. And I remember being told to shut up about peace because young people just took it for granted. It wasn't an issue anymore. And I think that's changed now. So let's not forget that. In terms of my time working in the European system, for me, the greatest triumph was the reunification of Europe. I grew up, you mentioned growing up in, or being born into, I guess just about being born into communist Romania. I was a young person growing up in the 1980s in the Cold War. So I grew up in a Cold War. And you have no idea how inconceivable it would have been for me at your age that I could be here today doing this. Or that I could go to Estonia or Poland or whatever, some places that were in the Soviet Union. This was the enemy. And we were terrified of nuking each other. I mean, literally, it was a nightmare that people of my generation had. And that all stopped. And it was the end of the Cold War. But then that was guaranteed. It was set in stone, I think, by the fact that Europe expanded and took in all the countries into the Union that had been on the other side of the Iron Curtain. So for me, that remains one of the truly great historic achievements of the European Union. But maybe that all sounds like ancient history to you. And I think really, and I join Alin, it's about the removal of boundaries and borders, not only from the ground, but from our minds. That now it's perfectly conceivable, I think, for everybody here, that you can go and study abroad, you can work abroad, you can holiday abroad, you can get to know people from abroad, you can make friends, you can hook up with someone from abroad, whatever it might be. You know, all of that is possible and normal. And yeah, it's not like the world's problems have entirely been solved, and it's not like there are no differences between us anymore, and those differences, we need to have them. But that the limits that were placed on every individual, so many of those have gone within Europe now, and I think that's the really great achievement.
Thank you very much. I know there were more questions, yes. Let's do like this. We'll take two at a time, okay? Because we already are running short on time, and this is why we are going to take two questions at the time. So please, can we have here a microphone here in front?
Sper că merge. Bună ziua, numele meu este Cărdei Lavinia și sunt studentă la Facultatea de Drept. Prima întrebare care ni s-a adresat la cursul de drept european a fost: sunteți euroforici sau eurosceptici? Și spre surprinderea mea, o mare masă din studenții din anul întâi au răspuns că sunt eurosceptici. Aș dori să le mulțumesc Dianei Filomon și lui Alin Chifan pentru toată educația legislativă și educația în general care este acordată de Gen Știri la nivel național, și aș dori să întreb la nivel european, oamenii de la Bruxelles, pentru că așa v-ați adresat, cum luptă împotriva valului de euroscepticism? Pentru că este o problemă foarte mare în momentul de față și noi încercăm să implementăm cât de bună este Europa și așa mai departe, să aducem ideea că România este Europa până la urmă, dar încercăm să le explic colegilor mei de ce trebuie să mergem la vot, de ce trebuie să ne prezentăm în continuare la lucrurile importante care țin de relația Europa-România, cum îi pot convinge? Și ce poziție are Uniunea Europeană la adresa acestui mare val de scepticism care atacă România? Să nu uităm poziția ei totuși în Europa. Mulțumesc!
Thank you for your question. There was another hand somewhere here. Yeah, there. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Tudor, I am 16 and I'm from Colegiul Național Constantin Negru Iași. I had a question, I think Diana Filimon mentioned AI. given the fact that Italy has banned ChatGPT, an AI that just thinks of it on its own because of the information that is on the internet, do you think AI can be a problem, can be something that can, I don't know, attack the European Union in some sort of way? Thank you.
Thank you. So I've been noting down. The first question was about Euroscepticism and also how we can counteract the extremist movements that are growing nowadays in all Europe. And also, I think that the question, it was most about the regulations that the EU can focus on when it comes to artificial intelligence. I will give the floor to Stephen once again. I'm doing that from here and from there, and yeah.
I'll try to be really succinct. Skepticism is not a bad thing. A questioning mentality and looking at things and saying, well, is this right, or is there a better way of doing things, is always good. Euroscepticism, however, is a distortion of that concept. It's become to mean a hostility to Europe per se, to the European Union and so on. And of course, I mentioned I'm British, I know where that can lead. And it's, you can argue against it rationally. And that's important that we always do that. And there's a whole problem of misinformation, which we've mentioned many times, and fighting misinformation, because much Euroscepticism is actually based on misinformation. But it's not only that. I think it's also important that we have an emotional response to Euroscepticism. And in fact, I think we saw this in the last elections in 2019. There was a widespread feeling across Europe that extremism and populist parties were sort of gaining ground everywhere across Europe. And this was a concern, and you know, where are we headed with this? And what we saw in the elections, very interestingly, was a major upturn in turnout. It went up considerably by 8 percentage points overall, but amongst young people, it went up 14% overall. So it was, as a proportion, young people got more involved and were more mobilized. And I think this whole problem of the threat posed by extremism and populism was in their minds. And there was a reaction. And the reaction wasn't to argue rationally for the benefits of building a new motorway or a new law on emission standards or whatever, important though these things are. It was about identity. It was about feeling European, that this is important to me, that, you know, we don't let ourselves slide back into a mentality of hostility and nationalism in that sort of crude sense. We want to live in a world where we feel we belong together. And that I think is the most important thing that we can do to fight Euroscepticism. And in fact, I know that there are concerns here, but all the figures are showing that in fact popular consent and support for the European Union is going up. And it's going up across Europe. I have to say, again, regrettably, Brexit helped, because a lot of people saw what happens when this gets out of control and how bad it is for a place, for a country, and for the people who live there. And I think it also happened because of the dangers and the crises we have faced. And people, it's been mentioned today. I mean, we've mentioned Ukraine, we've mentioned the pandemic. These were things that needed a reaction at a European level. And then AI. I'm not an expert, I'm sorry. I know, that, however, that this is something which is very central to the European Parliament's agenda right now. This is a major new technology. It's a major, potentially a huge change in the way that we do things, in our whole jobs market, our whole economy, our whole education sector. It's something that we need to address. And again, it's something we need to address at the level that goes beyond individual member states. It's something which has to be dealt with at an international level, and therefore for us at a European level. So I honestly don't know whether this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's probably like most things, it's going to be both, like printing or social media. It's going to be able to be used in good ways and bad ways. And our job now is to make sure, through the democratic process, that it's used in good ways, mainly.
So the AI, if will threaten the European Union citizens and the Romanian as well, it will be regulated as all the platforms are. I will take 2 other questions, if I may, so we can. Okay, so there were now you're putting me in an awkward position. I'm going to take one from here. Yes. And another one over there. Over there. Îl dau eu pe al meu dacă aveți nevoie. Serios.
Bună ziua, mă numesc Văcăreanu Cosmina, vin de la Liceul Dimitrie Cantemir, din cel mai nordic oraș al României, Darabani, județul Botoșani. Ne bucurăm și vă mulțumim că sunteți alături de noi pentru a ne informa astăzi. O chestiune pe care aș dori să o dezbatem este următoarea. Puține ziare sau televiziuni din România nu sunt controlate de politicieni. Chiar zilele trecute, un cunoscut realizator TV a fost nevoit să-și retragă emisiunea de la un post TV din cauza anumitor presiuni privind mesajele împotriva puterii politice actuale. Credeți că Uniunea Europeană ar putea să introducă anumite mecanisme pentru ca presa să poată fi independentă? Dacă da, care ar fi acestea? Vă mulțumesc!
Avem acolo? Okay, great.
My name is Kanaka Andrea, and I'm a student at the Faculty of International Relations and European Studies. And my question is some sort of variation of the first one regarding Euroscepticism, and it is the following. Knowing that the European elections are considered second-wave elections and that the parliament members that are sent there can usually take part of protest parties, how can we positively influence the outcomes of the elections, besides voting, of course, so we can have more representative members in the European Parliament, and not only members that try to push a certain agenda that isn't actually very coherent in terms of Europeism, if I can call it like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the first question, the control that is established above the media trust in Romania and the independent press, I would like to start with Diana first, and after that with Aline. And we will talk with Stephen about the positive actions that can support the democratic process and the EU elections that will take part next year. So Diana, please.
About the media being controlled, you mean?
Yes, and the independence of the press, because as we know, the system at the EU level and also in our country is independent. I mean, EU legislation permits the independence of the media. We are not living in countries that are having systems that are against the media freedom.
I would like to ask how many of you consume news from traditional media? No, besides the panel, that's the problem, in my opinion. We basically left the empty seats of media for people who are watching certain narratives, certain channels. We, as a bubble, disappeared from mainstream media pretty much. I have so many friends who are saying, I don't own a TV, and that's a very good thing. I own a TV because I watch YouTube on it, so and BBC while I'm working, or CNN, depends on what time it is. We are no longer there, so that's why they can do whatever they want. the press is free. Make it very clear. I was in the protests and people in the TV were saying about me and all my colleagues that I was paid to be there. I was not paid to be there. But they were allowed to do that, and the television grew because of that. Their audiences grew, the advertisements grew. So we are the public that has to punish this. We as a public need to take a stand when they go crazy. They are free, but it's a free market and they have to survive. We have to understand that. We can go on and talk a lot about how the money from advertisement are not going to the media anymore, to the press, because they're going to Facebook and Google and stuff like that, and that's a huge problem. We can go, but it's too short time to go there. The idea is that we need to be aware and awake and punish them, but the basis of all this is they are free. And only when we take a stand to punish them for saying lies and disinformation, they are punished. So here is the problem, that the people are absent, the law is absent in being implemented there. And to go quickly to the next one, to the next discussion about the actions to support the EU and what you were saying, we can't do more than vote in this moment, but we need to understand that the time doesn't run only elections only in election. We have to understand that we need to be citizens also between elections. Now it's not an election year, but you can go and make a petition or ask your mayor to do whatever you want if possible. There are so many legal ways, and that's why Aline is important. There are so many legal ways to put pressure on the government, put pressure on the authorities to not forget that you exist. And I think that's more important than even the vote. The vote is very important, but our attitude between voting is much more important. Thank you.
Țin și eu să adaug ceva foarte scurt pe subiectul acesta cu presa. În primul rând, responsabilitatea e a noastră atunci când vine vorba de presă. E un foarte mare slippery slope atunci când vine vorba de intervenția statului în presă, pentru că e foarte fină granița dintre un control de legalitate al presei, iar aici ne referim la abateri extrem de grave care țin de extremism sau alte asemenea în ceea ce privește presa, și pe de cealaltă parte o presă de calitate proastă. Noi suntem singurii care putem să controlăm și să sancționăm, după cum spunea și Diana, presa atunci când are anumite derapaje. Pentru că, alminteri, după cum spuneau și romanii, quis custodiet ipsos custodes, cine îi controlează pe controlor? Cum putem să evităm ca statul să abuzeze de puterea pe care am putea noi să-i oferim atunci când îi dăm instrumente de cenzură în ceea ce privește presa? Chiar dacă noi poate o facem dintr-un scop nobil, șansa și posibilitatea de a exista anumite abuzuri foarte grave este mult prea mare, iar riscul nu merită. Așa că noi suntem singurii care putem să controlăm și care putem să răspundem la această amenințare a unei prese de proastă calitate sau poate chiar o presă reavoitoare. Iar acum mă voi referi la întrebarea legată de euroscepticism. Vă mărturisesc și nu mi-e rușine să recunosc, înainte să mă informez și să cunosc istoria Uniunii Europene, eu însămi pot să zic că tindeam înspre un euroscepticism. Mergeam pe principiu, dar cine sunt ăștia să vină să ne spună nouă ce să facem? De ce să nu ne vedem noi de oile noastre, de sarmalele noastre, de tot ce avem noi în România mai bun și să-i lăsăm pe ceilalți să își facă treaba? Iar apoi, informându-mă din liceu și mai ales în facultate, când am făcut drept european și am învățat istoria Uniunii Europene, am învățat scopul pentru care există această organizație internațională. Și aici îmi amintesc de citatul din W.H. Auden, un poet britanico-american: "We must love one another or we must die." Ăsta este cumva motivul pentru care a existat Uniunea Europeană, după cum a spus și Steven. Pacea absolut necesară după cele două războaie mondiale care au distrus literalmente planeta sunt motivul pentru care există această uniune. Și pentru mine e un motiv suficient ca să cred în acest ideal. Nu mă consider o persoană idealistă, nu cred că ar trebui să ne amăgim cu scopuri pe care nu le putem atinge, dar nu ne împiedică nimeni să încercăm măcar să devenim mai buni și să încercăm să învățăm din greșelile trecutului. Iar Uniunea Europeană, după părerea mea, este exact o întruchipare, este o concretizare a ceea ce am învățat din istoria, din păcate o istorie foarte tristă a secolului 20 al umanității. Așa că euroscepticismul poate fi combătut doar prin informare și prin educație. După ce m-am educat și după ce m-am informat, am ajuns să nu mai fiu un eurosceptic și am ajuns să cred în acest ideal care a pornit de la Robert Schuman, după cum spuneam înainte, și care, uite, încă dăinuie până astăzi, ceva ce nimeni nu credea că o să supraviețuiască mai mult de, să zicem, 10 ani sau hai să zicem cei 50 de ani pe care i-au gândit ctitorii Uniunii Europene. Iar referitor, și aici o să fiu foarte succint, la AI, pentru că este un subiect așa de hot în ziua de azi, problema asta cu AI-ul mi se pare că am tot avut-o în istoria umanității. Știm cu toții de Revoluția Industrială, de James Watt, de motorul cu abur și așa mai departe. Chiar și în acele momente existau oameni extrem și foarte mulți, inclusiv intelectuali, inclusiv elitele societății, care erau extrem de îngrijorate de faptul că o să vină mașina de țesut și o să o trimită acasă pe croităreasă, nu o să mai poată să mai facă rochii și straie pentru cetățeni. Nu s-a întâmplat asta. Oamenii evoluează. Noi trebuie să ne adaptăm la evoluția tehnologică. Dacă rămânem să fim conservatori în ceea ce privește evoluția tehnologică, nu o să progresăm din niciun punct de vedere, nici social, nici politic, nici economic. Așa că, pe de o parte, nu trebuie să ne fie frică de schimbare, după părerea mea. Trebuie să îmbrățișăm această schimbare, dar nici să nu cădem în cealaltă extremă, respectiv să dăm frâu liber AI-ului și a tot ceea ce înseamnă, nu știu, corporațiile sau cei care promovează și care fac bani din tot ceea ce înseamnă AI. Am văzut situația din Italia cu sancționarea și scoaterea din legalitate, cel puțin cu titlu temporar, a ChatGPT, pentru că prelucra date, sau cel puțin se presupune că prelucra date în mod ilegal. Până la urmă, scopul e ca dreptul și legislația în general să se adapteze la această amenințare, sigur, această problemă, să zicem, ca să nu fiu prea dur, a AI-ului. Dacă reușim să ne adaptăm și să reglementăm această situație în mod corespunzător, nu văd cum nu am putea decât să beneficiem de ceea ce înseamnă AI. Așa că nu cred că o să ajungem în câțiva ani, poate să vorbim ca în romanele lui Asimov cu roboții, să ne ajute la curățenie și așa mai departe, dar asta nu înseamnă că nu ne pot ajuta în viața de zi cu zi, dacă o facem cum trebuie, în spirit european și până la urmă contemporan.
Mulțumesc foarte mult, Alin. Așa cum ziceam, dacă va fi ceva de reglementat, cu siguranță Uniunea Europeană va face asta. Despre independența presei din România, sunt jurnalist independent 100%. 100% și lucrez cu corporații media, lucrez cu trusturi media, dar lucrez din postura de jurnalist independent. Freelancer, dacă vrem să folosim neapărat termenul ăsta. Așa cum spunea și Alin, sunt de părere că presa la noi nu e neapărat proastă, dar este și responsabilitatea cetățeanului să facă o selecție a informațiilor și a canalelor media pe care le consumă, pentru că în felul ăsta se va schimba și peisajul media de la noi și fenomenul de consum al știrilor de acest gen. What we will do next, we will take all the questions. It's great that I'm seeing hands up. All the questions, we will note them down, and for the final remarks, I would like the three of you to focus on each and every of the questions, but build up a one response. A single response, that was the word, a single one. Okay, so we will start with in here. Yes, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Alex Balan. I'm from Negruții National College and I'm glad to be here and to take part of EPA's project. My question is whether if it would be possible for all major states around the globe to be a part in the future of an organization similar to European Union, which would promote democracy, human rights, respect and peace. If so, when? Or if not, why? Thank you.
Mă numesc Ana Maria Rugină, de la Liceul Dimitrie Cantemir Darabani, din județul Botoșani. Zilele acestea în România se dezbat în Parlament legile educației. Un punct foarte greu de depășit a fost cel referitor la conceptul de diversitate. Cum facem să depășim aceste puncte dificile din dezbaterea socială? Mulțumesc!
Thank you. Another one, please raise your hands once again. There and over there. And we are having 5 questions to answer in only one answer.
Bună ziua, numele meu este Petre Daniel Târziu, vin de la Colegiul Național de Artă, octavă în Ciră și vreau să spun inițial că apreciez foarte mult activitatea Dianei și a lui Arin. Chiar am făcut parte și din Asociația Forum Apurum și întrebarea mea, pentru că Arin a menționat federalism, un concept care noi ca Europa poate chiar ne-am dorit din momentul în care România a intrat în Uniunea Europeană. Am putea în viitor să ne gândim la o Uniune Europeană, poate chiar Statele Unite ale Europei sau orice altă denumire am prelua, sau dacă chestia asta s-ar întâmpla, s-ar pierde poate identitatea națională a statelor pe care le avem în prezent?
Thank you. Please, over there. The curly girl. Thank you.
Bună ziua! Mă numesc Furdulea Cosmina Petronela și vin de la Liceul Teoretic Miron Costin din Pașcani, iar în decursul întâlnirilor echipei EPAS ni s-au arătat motivele și beneficiile cunoașterii și punerii în practică a unei campanii electorale și cam ce ar însemna UE. Iar întrebarea ar fi: de ce nu s-ar introduce în școli un curs de cunoaștere a Uniunii Europene?
Thank you for your question. There was another hand somewhere there. Yes, yes.
Hello, my name is Rotarescu Emil. I'm 17 and I'm from Colegiul Național Gheorghica Dorohoi. As we all know, one of the main problems we are facing right now is climate change. And over the past decade, we have been seeing a significant increase in the livestock production. And as it comes with livestock, it is the great impact on the environment, such as greenhouse effects and deforestation, and how it affects the biodiversity and water potability. My question is, other than people's own initiative on making a change, what does the European Union have in plan to do to combat this problem?
Thank you. Another one. There's a hand.
Hello, my name is Evelyn and I'm from Alexandru Ioan College from Gura Humorului. And I have a question regarding law and the educational system. I've had an optional class about law and there was a problem we discussed about social media and disinformation, a point which Diana brought up to us, and it's about the teenagers and the impact of social media. But we were not talking about the older people who do not know how to inform themselves, because after communism they absorbed all the information like a sponge. And what can we do to prevent misunderstandings in which regards the information when it's about the older people? And how can we, I don't know, teach them how to do that in a proper way for their age, because they are fans of the TV and traditional trusts. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well. And the last one. I'm going over there. You have another one. Make it quick, make it quick.
Mă numesc Hapliuc Mădălina, sunt de la Liceul Dimitrie Cantemir din Darabani și sunt foarte curioasă în privința faptului cum am putea ajunge voluntari sau observatori în cadrul alegerilor de anul viitor.
Thank you for your question, and the last one here.
Bună ziua, mă numesc Ungureanu Beatrice și vin de la liceu cu program sportiv din Botoșani și am vrut să vă întreb opinia despre aderarea României în intrarea spațiului Schengen.
Thank you very much for your question. So, we have we have a lot of topics to debate, and also it's sure, it's a fact that this debate it will not be over. This is why we will continue to talk about all the subjects in the future, because we still have 1 year until the elections. Of course, we won't be able to tackle all the problems at the EU level in only 1 year, but for sure the fact that we are debating, we are discussing about that, about them, we are interacting, it's a step forward. So before we start with the final remarks, I would like to give a hand of applause for all of you. Thank you very much for proving once again that Europe matters here in Romania as well. So the questions, all the topics, I will quote a bit what I've been writing down. Is there going to be another EU? When and why? We have to talk also about diversity and the social debate in Romania regarding this topic. How about the federalization of the EU states? How about the EU education in school? What can we say about the climate protection policy? Let's talk a bit about also the year of skills at the European level, because it is the year of skills, and also how we can become volunteers in the next elections. You start. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was looking at you and
sorry. I was going to say I can help you by the fact that I lost interpretation for the last 2 questions, so I didn't know what they were. But now you've told me, so I can answer them as well.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be even longer. No, there were a couple of things about the future of the EU. The EU is work in progress. It always has been from the very beginning, and it will continue to progress, and it will do that in fits and starts. When things happen, they always say that Europe grows through crises. I think we've seen that happening recently. I think, unfortunately, we will continue to have crises, and we will continue to grow, and we will evolve gradually further. I don't think that we can what we should be very careful about is subsuming national identities and different identities within this European Union. The motto is united in diversity. And that's, I think, very important. I'm a Brit. I like cricket. I like Marmite. You don't even know what Marmite is. You'd think it was disgusting. It's a food. That is not threatened by the fact that I'm also a European. And I believe that very deeply. And I think that goes for everybody. Let's not be all the same. That would be boring. It would make my job more boring as well as I travel around. Whether or not this can be done at a global level, well, we'll see. The United Nations exists, but it struggles to act coherently very often, as we know. But it's a utopia to aim for. Why not? And I think we can aspire to universal human rights and universal rule of law and things like that. Diversity, I know this is, it can be a difficult subject, but we are talking a fundamental value of the European Union here, and we can't really compromise on this. All the member states of the Union have signed up to the fundamental values, which includes things like non-discrimination for all the possible reasons that you can discriminate. And I think we have to stick up for it, but I think we also need to understand that we're asking some people to make very big changes in their attitudes in quite a short space of time, and there needs to be a process of patience and gentle conviction pushing this through. And that's, I think, is happening. It's a generational thing as well, of course, and we will get there. We talked about EU education in school already. There's not enough of it. There are many individual initiatives. There are many teachers that take initiatives in this area. It would be nice to see more governments and regional authorities signing up for this. On climate, well, you're in the right place if you're into climate policy, because Europe is doing a huge amount. Even last week, 3 important laws were passed. Climate neutrality is coming our way. There are so many things. This is one of the big questions being addressed in Europe right now. I'm not an expert in it, but I know that that is a focus of so much of the work going on in Brussels and Strasbourg, and indeed in all the national capitals as a result. We are changing things. Whether or not we're doing it fast enough is another question. If you're interested in climate, vote. If you're interested in diversity, vote. And you said, let's not make these second order elections. They can only be that if people sit back and ignore them. If we take an interest, if we mobilize, if we hold the people to account, the candidates, if we question them, ask them what they're really going to do, we wouldn't get the kind of people you were talking about, right? I think it's, well, maybe we would, but we would consciously get them, if you see what I mean. It wouldn't be through negligence. It would be because people actually seem to want that. The year of skills, it is the year of skills, and I hope that, again, skills is something that we can acquire through many ways, through the education systems, but also through the kind of things that we do here. And using those skills is much more possible because of Europe. And then the last one, how to volunteer. There's a QR code outside. I mentioned it before. I mentioned this thing here. ԻΜΠΡΕΟΥΝΑ in EU. Please do it. You won't regret it. It can take you a long way. It can take you interesting, strange places, places that you might not have discovered otherwise. I think you said that, Oana. So please, if there's one message from me, finally, join up, please.
And I have to say something, because as you said, the European Union and its institution, it's work in progress every day. And we are working together for this, but nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect either, so I forgot about the question regarding the Schengen area. So I'm coming back with this one. This was the last question. Yeah.
Schengen, it's a great thing, and Romania should be in Schengen area. Do I have to say that any more clearly than that? The European Parliament says so. It's been saying so for about 10 years now. The European Commission has said the same thing. But the law is the law. We have to respect the processes that apply. And at the moment, there is still an obstacle in the system. But Parliament and Commission both are doing whatever they can to remove that obstacle. And the sooner, the better. That's all I can say.
We weren't less Europeans until this topic appeared on the daily order. We are not less Europeans now. This is what I'm thinking. I will give now the floor to Diana for ending remarks, please.
I was spending some time last year with a good friend of mine from Zimbabwe, an activist from Zimbabwe, and we were sharing histories of our own continents. And I started telling her about the little and big wars in Europe around, only in the last century. And at the end, she asked me, like, how do you guys get along now in the European Union if you killed each other for hundreds and hundreds of years? And I said, it's pretty simple. We realized that life is good, and we are stupid to fight each other, and we should share what we have and grow together. And she said, I really wish someday Africa will be in the same place as you are. And I really want for her continent to get to that place. But it's a very complicated process to answer your question when another union come. It's a lot, I think it's a lot of luck for us to be in a union that was created in a window of opportunity. And we have to be also constantly aware and help, if we can, other regions of the world. About the education law, now I will be short here. You need to make yourselves much more heard. If there are two fights for your generation, in my opinion, you can contradict me if I'm wrong, the two fights are climate change and diversity, tolerance, inclusion. So if you have an opinion on this subject, please make yourselves heard. We have been covering all the protests in Romania in the last year and a half with Gen Știri. You don't want to know in the comments what we have and how many comments we find so violent and so aggressive that we have to delete. So there's a huge wave under the surface that's coming towards us, and you need to be aware of it. And if something is important for you, you need to stand up for it, because democracy and history don't always go towards better times. Sometimes they go for worse, and laws can be changed by people in power, put in power by our absence or our vote, and you need to stand up for this. And it's more your fight to convince the adults what are your priorities, so be clear about that. About social media and older generation, the extremist parties in Romania got more votes from younger people. I'm sorry to say it. That's sad, but it's a reality. In 2020, they got more support from the younger generation than the older ones. That doesn't change the fact that, yes, they are more vulnerable sometimes to social media. And in my opinion, the only way to change a person's mind or to influence them is to talk to them like human beings. I'm sure you know also Andrew Tate. I'm sure you know a lot of weird little guys or big guys who are influencing in a direction or another. You have to think, why do people follow someone who is an extremist or is leading people to radicalization? And it's personal reasons sometimes. It's for the younger generation in this moment has less friends than the older generation. It's the first time in history when you have fewer friends than your grandparents have. So that's very worrying. And that gives a lot of space to manipulation and disinformation. So talk to your parents or grandparents or whomever you feel like it's in danger, or even your best friends. Talk to them like, why do you believe these guys? Why do you follow this television? What do you think can be better in your life, and can I help? If you need me to talk about whatever, I'm here. So be available, listen, and talk to them. And to quickly close with the observers, follow the civic NGOs, because now it's a bit too soon, but we will definitely announce at the end of the year, at the beginning of next year, we will announce our campaigns to get together young people, not only young people, but my extreme joy is to see young people as observers. And we will train you and guide you and help you to get there with your fancy ideas.
Thank you very much. Alin?
Mulțumesc că am și eu un follow-up la ce spunea Diana adineauri. În ceea ce privește dezinformarea și tot acest val extremist care amenință Europa în momentul de față, învățăm din istorie faptul că vremurile grele creează, din păcate, vremuri extremiste și noi, în momentul de față, trăim vremuri grele. După cum spuneam înainte, am trecut printr-o pandemie groaznică, trecem, cel puțin în calitate de observatori, din fericire, printr-un război, chiar la granița Uniunii Europene. Sunt vremuri care favorizează valul extremist. Singura noastră șansă de scăpare este, și din nou, nu vreau să fiu prea insistent, și din nou, nu vreau să fiu clișeic, dar ăsta este răspunsul, educația, informarea. Trebuie să ne uităm în trecut, să privim în trecut, în perioada interbelică, bună oară, în care criza economică, războiul, primul război mondial, a generat un val de frică, un val de, cum să zic, o moarte a speranței în sufletul europenilor, care au generat un val extremist care se resimte până astăzi, iar și a cărui urmări le resimțim chiar și astăzi. Așa că să profităm de faptul că trăim, după cum spuneau și antevorbitorii mei, în cel mai bun moment în care a fost omenirea și în special Europa până acum, de departe, mai ales Europa de departe. Trăim într-o Europa păcii, într-o Europa prosperității, iar îndemnul meu ar fi să o menținem așa, keep it that way, dacă ar fi să fiu și ușor bilingv. Referitor la diversitate și la Statele Unite ale Europei, sigur, acesta ar fi idealul Uniunii Europene, o federalizare a Europei, dar nu ne referim la o federalizare extremă, cum este, de exemplu, cum sunt Statele Unite ale Americii. Uniunea Europeană este o structură sui generis, este o structură care nu a existat până acum niciodată și care, apropo de ideea de un stat, niște State Unite ale lumii despre care întreba cineva, Uniunea Europeană a fost o utopie la începutul secolului 20. După războaiele mondiale, nimeni nu credea în ideea de Uniune Europeană și uite că în ziua de astăzi ne întâlnim sub egida Uniunii Europene deja la 73 de ani de la declarația Schuman imediat, ceea ce nimeni nu ar fi crezut. Așa că, fără să fim idealiști, putem să credem în această deviză, după părerea mea, genială, unitate în diversitate. Ceea ce ne diferențiază nu pune o barieră între noi, ci ne unește. Până la urmă, asta este ceea ce înseamnă Uniunea Europeană și asta este singurul mod prin care putem să progresăm și să trăim într-o Europa a prosperității. Mai întâi de toate, suntem europeni. Da, suntem români, suntem germani, suntem britanici, suntem nemți și așa mai departe, dar este foarte important să reținem că suntem europeni și scopul nostru este să prosperăm și să nu mergem înapoi în istorie, chiar dacă poate vecinii noștri de la Est au alte idei, mai exact un vecin cu intenții și viziuni din secolul trecut, viziuni revizioniste, viziuni care atentează la democrație. Scopul nostru și misiunea noastră este să ne apărăm și să luptăm împotriva acestei amenințări. Referitor la climate change, sigur, dacă cineva face ceva în ceea ce privește climate change, Uniunea Europeană este acela, respectiv poate ați auzit de declarația Ursulei von der Leyen, care s-a și concretizat într-un plan extrem de complex. Am trecut și eu peste el zilele acestea, nefiind specialist, vă zic sincer, m-a frapat complexitatea lui. Planul ca Uniunea Europeană să devină neutră din punct de vedere climatic până în anul 2050. Este un cel ambițios și un cel care pe mine, ca european, mă face mândru să trăiesc pe un continent care aspiră să fie singurul continent de pe planetă neutru din punct de vedere climatic. Și să știți că treaba asta nu e o demagogie, nu e un ideal doar pentru a obține voturi, ci Uniunea Europeană chiar ia acțiune și face ceva în privința asta. Să știți că anul acesta, mi se pare, dacă nu mă înșel, am depășit cu mult așteptările de reducere a emisiilor de carbon. Mi se pare că ținta era undeva la 20%, suntem deja cu mult peste 30%. Așa că, în ceea ce privește climate change-ul, eu nu sunt optimist, dar asta nu înseamnă că trebuie să ne culcăm pe ureche, să lăsăm ștacheta jos. Până la urmă, schimbarea nu vine neapărat de la centru, nu vine neapărat de la Bruxelles sau de la Strasbourg, ci vine din fiecare dintre noi. Ei sunt cei care ne dau doar imboldul necesar ca să schimbăm ceva. Dacă noi continuăm să ignorăm problema climate change, încălzirii globale, gazelor cu efect de seră, nu facem decât să ne condamnăm singuri la moarte. Vorba lui Jean-Paul Sartre, omul este singurul responsabil de natura și de faptele sale, deci noi suntem responsabili de cum va arăta planeta peste 50 de ani, peste 100 de ani, atunci când nepoții sau strănepoții noștri vor veni la o conferință de acest gen și își vor spune europeni. Iar acum, în încheiere, referitor la aderarea României la Schengen, sigur, nu pot decât să achesez la faptul că România nu este mai puțin europeană decât toate celelalte state, chiar dacă suntem printre cei care au intrat recent în Uniunea Europeană, dar eu unul tind să fiu optimist, văd România în spațiul Schengen în următorii ani și vreau să vă spun că, până la urmă, în orice familie se mai întâmplă și certuri. Cred că Uniunea Europeană le va depăși, cred că România și Bulgaria vor intra în spațiul Schengen și cred că Uniunea Europeană în următorii, să zicem, câteva zeci de ani, în viitorul apropiat sau mediu, va primi în familia sa state precum Muntenegru, Macedonia, Serbia și așa mai departe și vom ajunge să fim un continent cu adevărat european, prosper din toate punctele de vedere, dar din nou asta ține de fiecare dintre noi. Mulțumesc!
Mulțumesc și eu. La cele mai recente alegeri europene, adică tura trecută, am participat în cadrul proiectului De data asta votez, un proiect inițiat de Biroul Parlamentului European în România. Nu numai că mi s-a schimbat viața, dar în același timp am primit challenge, cum se spune. Am dezvoltat o campanie în câteva licee din București, am fost și în mediul rural și am luat contact cu niște oameni, vreo 300-400 de oameni care participau la un maraton de biciclete. Mi-am făcut un stand acolo și am început să povestesc despre alegerile europene, dar am dezvoltat și o campanie online. Practic a fost așa un fel de mix de marketing, în așa fel încât să ajung și în rural, și în urban, și online, și offline, peste tot. Ideea este că fiecare dintre noi și fiecare dintre voi, toți cei care vă aflați aici, dacă vreți să puneți umărul, este foarte simplu. Vă înscrieți pe platforma Împreună în EU, găsiți QR code-ul și afară, iar schimbarea începe cu fiecare dintre noi. Știu că sună așa cheesy, dar de fapt și de drept cam ăsta e adevărul. Fiecare dintre noi avem puterea să facem mai mult. Așa că hai să ieșim din bulă, să ne suflecăm mâinecile și să facem astăzi și pentru mâine. Să nu mai așteptăm să facă altul, să nu mai așteptăm să vină din altă parte, să nu mai așteptăm să vină de la alții și așa mai departe. Și să nici nu ne mai complacem în mentalitatea asta conform căreia n-am avut noroc, noi n-am avut context, nouă nu ni s-a întâmplat, nu s-a putut și așa mai departe. Nu, stă în puterea fiecăruia dintre noi să facem și pentru mâine tot astăzi. Vă mulțumesc foarte mult că ați fost alături de noi. Vreau să le mulțumesc și invitațiilor noștri. Domnul Stephen Clark, the Director in the Directorate General for Communication of the European Parliament, Diana Filimon, Alin Chifor. Ne bucurăm foarte mult că ați fost alături de noi. Aplauze și pentru voi. Și până data viitoare, când ne vom revedea face-to-face, ne vedem online pe toate rețelele de socializare. Conturile Biroului Parlamentului European le găsiți foarte repede, la fel și platforma Împreună în EU. Mulțumim!